How's it going, laser Bruce up? I'll be Sixkilla. Welcome back to Choices That Matter. And the sun went out. Apparently our jet to leave Moscow, or Russia in general, has been compromised, and we don't know how yet. Stay silent and listen, I guess. Someone messed with the control panel in the cockpit, she told Crank. I can't access the flight controls. Unlock the landing gear. Nothing. Someone's trying to keep us from heading back to China, Crank muttered angrily. Any idea why? No, not unless someone in China stole our friend's motorcon and is somehow sabotaging the jet from there, she said. I sighed. Though that would make the team in China the main suspects, at least then I could rule out Sharon. The doors to the jet swung shut suddenly, with Dolores and Crank still outside. The lights in the cabin were flickering. Puzzled, I walked into the cockpit, expected to see Dagger, but it was empty. What are you doing? Dolores yelled from outside the window, waving at me. It's not me, I yelled back. How do I open the door back up? Emergency hatch next to the door, Dagger yelled, appearing from the garage. I went back to the door and found the right lever. Pulling it hard, the light stopped flickering and the door opened. I ran hastily down the steps as Dagger shoved past me to get inside. What just happened? Dolores demanded. I looked back at the jet thinking. Just how much of the jet's electronics were tampered with? Who's got the technical know-how to mess with the jet? I asked. Satine, Crank muttered, looking at Dolores. She knows planes. Satine was the only Aetherite representative who came to Russia. I distinctly remember her fascination with Moti. A thought suddenly occurred to me. What if the Aetherites in China had Moti and Satine was here to stop us going after them? Have we heard from Satine and the others? No, Dagger murmured, reappearing from the doorway. We haven't heard from the others in a while, not even Petrus. How could Satine be doing this? I asked, gesturing at the jet, addressing Dagger, who seemed to know best. I've no idea, she shook her head. Usually for this kind of thing, I'd say the culprit would have to be plugged directly into the controls of the plane. But it's just us here. Strip apart the wiring, Dolores ordered, looking around. If anyone's controlling it remotely, I want to know about it. Dagger and Crank looked at each other warily. It's a big job, Dagger noted. Then do it quickly, Dolores replied, spinning on her heel and walking back to the house. Dinner in 10. Crank swore under his breath and Dagger elbowed him in the ribs with a warning look. I'll get to work, she muttered. Crank shuffled his feet and followed Dagger, picking up the toolkit. Help Dagger and Crank? Before I could take another step in either direction, a rumbling alerted me to an incoming car at the end of the driveway. Crank immediately appeared beside me, pulling out a gun. Friend of yours? I asked, frowning. I can't see who they are yet, but better to be safe than sorry, he muttered. As the car got closer, I caught sight of the driver and I placed a hand on Crank, making him lower the gun. Dolores also joined us as the car screeched to a halt and the doors opened. G'day, mates. Sharon nodded to us all, climbing out of the driver's seat while her tattooed Russian friend climbed out of the passengers. Sorry for the runabout back there, Sharon said, looking at me, but I had to get things done, you know? I looked at her wrists, but Moti wasn't on either of them. Well, Dolores drawled, you're just in time for dinner. This is Vadik, Sharon introduced, pointing to the muscle-bound man behind her. Best hacker I know. Not sure I have enough food for him, Dolores mused. Vadik, wanna help us hack into a space program? You're a little slow on the uptake, mate, Sharon laughed, looking at me. Stop wasting time, Dolores said. There are Russian servers we have to hack. That's why we're here, Sharon told me. We've already done it. What? Dolores asked, startled. To be fair, I had help, Vadik explained. We were outside the data center when all the security guards suddenly left in a hurry, leaving the place virtually unguarded. My eyes widened. The diversion Crank and I had pulled had inadvertently helped Sharon and Vadik, it seemed. Well, where's the data? It's on your tablet, translation and all, Vadik explained, pointing at it as he pulled a cell phone out of his pocket. Should have finished uploading by now. I pulled out my tablet and noticed an icon read, The Secret Stuff. I clicked on the icon to open it, hoping desperately that it was compatible with my old tablet. It was. It opened, but it was only a sound file. No matter, it was the astronaut's words that mattered, surely. And of course, it would be in Italian, so I switched to the translation program Vadik had prepared. The astronaut's voice was as clear as if he was speaking to me on the telephone. His terror was palpable. Where are you? What happened? This is Luca. Please tell me I'm not blind. No, I'm not. I can see everything. Too much. What's happening to me? It's... Oh, save me from this fate. Is anyone else hearing this? You have to see this. I understand now. Everything we thought we knew was wrong. Hello? Hello? Anyone? Oh no. It played again. And then a third time. I checked the translation manually. We were right. The recording was absolutely crucial, but I still had no idea what it meant. Luca's final words echoed in my head. Everything we thought we knew was wrong. What happened out there? What did Luca see when the sun went out? Why did he sound so afraid? Arc 11 completed. 36% of players created a division by blowing up a building in Russia. I didn't know we had a choice. It seemed like that was the only way to go. Dolores watched me expectantly, holding out her hand. Why am I always in the minority? Am I crazy? Don't answer that. Everything we know is wrong, I paraphrased, passing her my tablet numbly. Dagger and Crank huddled behind her to watch the recording and subtitles. I stepped aside to where Sharon and Vadik were. You sure this is legitimate and correct? I asked Vadik. He crossed his arms in disgust. I'm never wrong, right, Shazza? He nudged Sharon. I looked at her, noticing how she wouldn't look directly at him. He's the best, she reassured me. Now if I could borrow Moti? So you really don't have it, I sighed, my heart sinking. As much as I didn't want to believe it of Sharon, it would have made my life easier if Moti was simply borrowed by Sharon. What do you mean I don't have it? Where is it? She asked, confused. Missing since we landed, I answered. The China team are also suspects. How? Sharon asked, then answering her own question. He was sleeping. He basically passed out until we got here. As an added kick, the jet's been compromised, I muttered, pointing behind me. It won't take off, which means you can't go to China to find Moti. And it would make sense if Moti's in China, Sharon said before looking around. And someone sabotaged the jet. I wondered if Sharon suspected Satine and the Etherites too. I can track a motorcom for you, Vadik interrupted, sliding between Sharon and I. I can track anything. Thanks, Vadik. Anything we can do to get ahead. Vadik grinned and winked at Sharon. He stepped away, pulled his phone out and started typing. I didn't give him any details, I muttered to Sharon. He doesn't need any, she rolled her eyes. When Sharon and I were done, I smiled at her. Glad you're back, I said, eyeing Dolores and her lackeys through the cockpit door. I was starting to feel outnumbered. Don't thank me yet, Sharon sighed. I tried to get Vadik to stay where he was, but he wanted to tag along. You don't think he'll be useful? I asked, moving my gaze to him. He said he was the best. He also has a great knack for getting me and others into trouble. She swayed on her feet, looking around. I haven't seen him in years. Why not? I asked, tilting my head. He was perfectly her type. But he's ancient history, she said. Listen, don't tell him about Chrissy, alright? He doesn't need to know. I frowned. Alright. What's your next move? She asked, apparently eager to move the conversation on. I guess we'll just follow Dolores' lead for now. We gotta focus on saving the world, not worrying about our fucking watch. Sharon nodded and crossed her arms. I'll follow you, of course, she said before subtly glancing at Dagger and Crank. So what's Dolores' lead? I don't know yet, I admitted. We haven't discussed it. If you have to guess? I rubbed my forehead and thought it over. We were trying to get information from the Russian space program. That much you know, I said to Sharon, glancing at where Vadik had gone. But the recording raised more questions than it answered. They want us to keep digging around the Russian Space Agency, see if we can find out more. They as in the diabolical trio over there, she asked, making squinty eyes at Dagger, Crank and Dolores. Yes, why? It's no big deal. I just don't trust them, that's all, she shrugged. Why else would I have taken off without talking to you first? That Dolores character is a real galah. I still know what that is. Vadik laughed as he walked over to us, making eyes at Sharon. Well, no, you never did come to Australia to find out, she retorted with an edge in her voice. Vadik winced. Ah, so you think we should split ways with Dolores, I interrupted, uncomfortable. I think she's suspicious and needs to be watched, is all, Sharon nodded. So we don't trust her, we use her until this is over. Strangely, I have no luck tracking your motorcom, Vadik admitted. Whoever has it is adept at keeping it dark, or has simply destroyed it. I swallowed. That didn't sound good. Dolores joined us. Crank and Dagger flanked her. We have to move fast, she said, handing back my tablet. I don't care how good the Russian is. She shot a look at Vadik. If we hacked into their servers, they know. We need to move. Vadik squared his shoulders. I was careful. And there's only one hacker better than me, he said proudly. And they have no idea the servers were breached. Really? Dolores drawled, fixing her laser stare on him. Who's the better hacker? I'd rather have them. Vadik narrowed his eyes with indignation, turning and taking Sharon's arm. Come, let's leave. We don't need to be treated like this. You're not special. She treats everyone the same, Sharon muttered, shaking him off. What do you need from us, Dolores? We need to validate the authenticity of this recording, as well as downloading any notes the Russian government has on this recording, she reeled off. We'll start tomorrow morning. I cut Sharon off when she opened her mouth to respond. Dolores nodded. You can sleep in the house. I've prepared extra bedrooms. How many do you need? She asked, eyeing Vadik and Sharon. Don't put yourself out, we'll sleep in the jet. Alright, Dolores muttered. We've got more work to do. When you're ready to leave in the morning, Crank will drive you. She turned and walked away, the others trailing after her. Well, that's that then, Sharon muttered, watching them go. Good thing Vadik will be able to hack anything we need. Of course, he scoffed. Yeah, but the reality is we can't do anything until tomorrow, I said. Go get some sleep. We'll leave a bit after dawn. She nodded and took Vadik's arm, dragging him away. He looked pleased with himself, and I don't like it. I went back to get my bag from the car and sat outside. I looked over my notes from Dolores while the sun was setting. Ironically, Moti would have been far better at finding themselves than I was. I was no closer than I had been when we landed. I wrote out all the suspected thieves again and stared at the names one by one. I started with Sharon's name. Now that she was back with us, her motive for stealing Moti was gone. She had only wanted Moti to contact Chrissy, nothing else. I tried to call Etienne again to see if he knew anything, but it was no good. I couldn't seem to reach anyone in China. You look troubled, friend, came a voice, and I looked up to see Petrus. He sat next to me, and I could see a bruise on his left cheek. Petrus, what happened to you? Moti's gone missing, I said, leaning back against the brick wall I was sitting against. I'm trying to figure out who took it. Petrus frowned and angled his head to read my list. We're all suspects, even those in China? Haven't seen Moti since we dropped off the first team, I nodded. I fell asleep without looking for Moti. The large fellow, Crank, said the plane was also tampered with, Petrus said. Surely someone on the China team couldn't have done that. Unless they're working with someone here, I said, thinking of Satine. I just can't see another motive for anyone to disable the jet. Maybe to make sure we don't leave without them, Petrus mused, staring up at the sky. Why would anyone think we'd leave without them? I asked, thinking. I didn't consider that. I should have asked Petrus earlier. His mind worked fast and he was all about collaboration. Considering how unstable Russia is, everyone's on edge. Maybe that's why, he inclined, tapping his lip. If that's right, all we have to do is wait for them to return. Petrus pursed his lips. Let's investigate the jet in any case, he decreed, standing up. Maybe there's a clue, Moticon related or not. I sighed and nodded. I wasn't tired yet, so I might as well do something useful. The door was still open, so we climbed the stairs and stepped into the cabin. The only steady light came from the cockpit. All the other lights on the plane were flickering on and off, almost in rhythm. I poked my head into the cockpit to find Dagger under the plane's console. Where are Sharon and Vadik? I asked, looking for them. You think they can sleep with these flickering lights? She said sarcastically. I sent them to the house. Dagger had rigged a work light up on the desk, and I noticed the cockpit lights were flickering too. The steady light I'd seen earlier was from this rigged up work light. What's wrong with them? I asked. They're all in tune with each other, Petrus noted, glancing down the cabin. Could it be a power surge? Evening, Petrus. Nice of you to join us, Dagger called sarcastically. It's not the power source. That was one of the first things I tried. It's not the fuel lines either. I wanted to check that before we blew up. Your conclusion then? He asked while looking around with interest and bemusement. Electrical, she grunted. Something in the wiring, I think. But I haven't found it yet. Which of us has the technical knowledge to do this? As far as I know, myself, Satine, Miss Montague, maybe that Wong guy, she said, sliding out from under the desk for the first time. She nodded at Petrus, who smiled back politely. Any of them could have done this, I asked, squatting to look at the mess of cables she'd been tangled in. How? No idea, she shrugged. A total lockout? That's easy to do remotely, but this turning on, turning off, closing the doors thing, I've not seen it before. Could it be a malfunction? Petrus asked, handing her the tool she was pointing to. And the timing is just a coincidence? I don't think so. No, I mean, if someone were to remotely trigger the lockout device, he clarified, could that device itself malfunction and cause this? She paused. I hadn't thought of that, she muttered. I don't see how, but that's the best explanation I've heard so far. Will you let me know if you find anything? I asked, as she returned under the console. I'll report to Miss Montague, she said. If she thinks it's worth your time, she'll tell you. Petrus gave me a look, and we left quickly, leaving it to her. That was an obtuse answer, Petrus noted, walking with me back to the house. One I'm familiar with. They're very loyal. Petrus gave me a piercing look and I shrugged. I guess we'll know when we know, I dismissed. If it's the company, then we'll probably just have to override the lockout device and be on our way. If it's not, he asked, raising an eyebrow, then it probably means sabotage. And if there's dirty work, Dolores will have us do it. I thought our friend in the jet handles all the dirty work, Petrus said, glancing behind him. We could still see the flickering lights in the cockpit. They have dirtier work to do usually, I admitted, yawning. Petrus clapped my shoulder with a knowing look and opened the front door in the same motion. Get some sleep, he advised, leading me in. I think I'll need some too. Let me know if you have any assistance, if you need any assistance in the morning. I thanked him and we parted ways down the corridor. Dolores had helpfully left notes tacked to the wall, which told us which bedrooms we were assigned to. Mine was on the second floor and it had a balcony. I scoffed at the opulence of it all, but was grateful all the same. For the first time in what seemed like ages, I set my own alarm clock to the old clock beside the bed. I missed Moti keenly. Sharon woke me the next morning. I thought you said we were leaving early, she asked, annoyed. Why, what time is it? Sharon hauled the curtains back to show daylight. I groaned. It was well after dawn, almost noon by the look of it. Can't you wake up on your own, she muttered. I slid out, grabbed my bag and headed for the bathroom. I set the alarm. I don't know why it didn't go off. I called through the closed door. There was silence for a moment, then Sharon snorted. You set it to PM, but sure, that's fine too, she called back. I'll wait outside. We can take the car Vadik stole. What's the deal there anyway? I said before she could leave. I hadn't had a chance to ask her. I mean, I met your boyfriends before, but he's different, she agreed. I was with him longer than anyone. It ended badly. That's it. Of course, you ended it, I said, laughing. All the men love some Sharon, or so I've seen. Sharon's face was pale when I emerged from the bathroom. I stopped, instantly regretting my choice of words. I'm sorry. You went to jail, she interrupted, and I was pregnant with Chrissy. I had to settle down and stop with the crazy stuff. I swallowed and nodded as she turned to leave. Outside, Vadik was already in the car. He was in the passenger seat, forcing me into the back seat, which was fine with me. I remember how you like to drive, he said, smiling at Sharon as she climbed into the driver's seat. She ignored him. Where to? Wait, let me see if Petrus can join us. I jumped out and quickly ducked back out inside looking for Petrus. He was in the kitchen. He frowned as I explained what we were doing and why we didn't want Crank with us. Why are you telling me this then? He asked, tilting his head. Of everyone, I think you're the most honest, I said, rolling my shoulders. I trust you. He nodded. In that case, I should stay here, he nodded, picking up his fork again. I'll be your eyes while you're out there. I thanked him and returned to the car, letting Sharon and Vadik know what Petrus had said. I like him, Sharon approved, revving down the driveway. I'm fine to just keep driving, but a direction would be nice, she reminded me. I nodded and pulled out the folder Dolores had prepared for us. It contained a list of places that had strategic value. If we were going to continue stealing from the Russians, we needed the upper hand. All of these places should be easy pickings now, I muttered, leafing through. Crank and I blew some stuff up and the security teams were called back. You blew something up? Sharon asked, incredulous. Crank did. I just asked him to, I replied. Well, pick one and let's go, Sharon urged, idling the car at the end of the driveway. I pulled out the last sheet from the folder and looked it over. This one, I passed to her. It's actually part of the space program, so it should have useful data on these servers. We just have to hope it's the right information. I'm on it, she nodded, turning left. Is this something I can hack? Vadik asked, rubbing his hands together. I'd appreciate your help, yes. Eventually, after some trouble with driving in a volatile city, we found the right grey government building, surrounded by other grey government buildings. Do you need to be inside to do your thing? I asked Vadik. I know a lot of stuff is wireless these days, but classified information? Would you need to plug in? Let me see what I can pick up first, he blinked, pulling out his phone. I'm sure even without security, the people working here wouldn't allow me to just access their files. I guess not. To be honest, I haven't met many friendly locals. That's how they are, Sharon told me, looking in the rearview mirror. They're grumpy and crotchety, and will get offended when you tell them that. I'm offended, Vadik responded with a flirty smile. I'm bored, I retorted. What do you think, Shazza? Should we go in, guns blazing? You don't have a gun, she snorted, peering through the window. I might, I hedged. And these cool tasers, look. I took one out of my pocket and showed her. She took it and turned it over in her hand. Can I keep one of these, she asked hesitantly. If, that is, you don't mind. Yeah, of course. She smiled at me sweetly and tucked the taser into her belt. I was glad I had a spare. Well, Sharon said, looking towards the building, it's not like anyone will bother us. Have you seen anyone else just wandering the streets? Cars, but not people, I agreed. My government isn't so good at keeping people under control these days, I hear. From prison, I scoffed. From prison, he nodded. We were overcrowded before I let myself out. I even had a cellmate. Let me guess, I said. You don't play well with others. You're not wrong, Sharon muttered. Let's lay low, I said quickly, putting a stop to a potential argument. We'll sit out here and see if Vadik the Valiant can make any headway hacking without having to go inside. I sat back and waited. And waited. And waited. Vadik seemed to be constantly doing something on his phone, but whatever it was, I didn't understand it, and he said nothing. Sharon obviously trusted him, though, because she took the time to have a nap, reclining back as far as she could in her chair. Suddenly something moved in the corner of my eyesight. I sat upright. Crank knocked on my window, waving, clearly pleased that he scared me. How'd you find us? Crank rolled his eyes. There are only a few places you could have been. Give me some credit. I opened the door and stepped out of the car, folding my arms. We left without you, I admitted. I'm sorry. He laughed. Like I care. Dolores says fetch you and I fetch you. And what exactly are you fetching us for? Sharon asked, raising an eyebrow. She and Vadik had stepped out of the car, waiting to see what would happen. She said to give up on this getting the info task, she shrugged. She doesn't need it anymore. Why not? I questioned, bemused. It had been so very important last night. And what are we meant to do now? He pulled out his phone and clicked it a few times. My phone vibrated that moment, telling me it had a text message. Figure out what's happening with Farah and Satine, Crank answered. That's where they're staying. Farah sent Dolores a shady text. Saying what exactly? He shrugged. I don't really ask questions. Rolling my eyes, I got back in the car with Sharon and Vadik. I told them the address and Vadik instructed Sharon which way was best to get there. That's fishy, don't you think? Sharon asked as soon as we were on the road. I don't think anything Crank does is fishy anymore, I sighed, rubbing my head. Confusing, yes, but that's only because he has no idea what's going on himself, and he doesn't care. Vad, keep working on hacking the government, while we check out Farah and Satine, Sharon said abruptly. I don't trust Dolores and the others, I'd rather know for myself. He nodded and returned to his phone, fingers flying across the keypad. The hotel Dolores had sent us was decorated ostentatiously, and was clearly aimed toward tourists. Once we were inside, I spotted a man waiting behind the counter. Business must be slow? I was surprised when Vadik followed us into the hotel, his phone no longer in his hands. I'm running a hacking subroutine right now, he explained. It'll be some time before it's finished. Just let me do the talking, I hissed, in reply before approaching the hotel receptionist. Ask about Farah and Satine? Excuse me, I called. I was wondering if you could tell me if some friends of mine have checked in. I probably couldn't, he droned, not looking up. I persisted. 2 women of different ages travelling together. Would have arrived in the last 2 days. He gave a great huff and turned to face me. They're probably the pair in room 414, he grunted. Are we done? I nodded, wrinkling my nose. That was the easily the worst hotel service I've ever experienced. The 3 of us stepped into the elevator and pushed the button for the 4th floor. Elevator music started playing when the doors closed, and I closed my eyes. I wasn't a fan of elevator music. I don't think anyone is. I was the first one out when the elevator dinged and the doors slid open. Striding down the carpeted hallway, I looked for room 414. It turned out to be around the corner, on the left, and I paused in front of it. Vadik sighed and pushed me out of the way, knocking hard on the door. This was why no one wants to work with you, Sharon muttered under her breath. I wanted to agree, but resisted. After a few moments, Vadik knocked again, but there was no answer. What's the plan, fearless leader? He asked me in a pointed and sarcastic tone. Move aside, I'll see if I can pick the lock. We're good at that, remember? Vadik frowned as he stepped to the side, allowing me to access the door. I could just kick it down, he offered, watching me. I'd rather not announce to everyone that we're breaking in, thank you, I muttered in return. It took longer than I expected, the lock's being different to any I'd picked before, but I eventually got it. The door swung open with a click. Sharon applauded me and I chuckled at the green look on Vadik's face. 3 of us stepped inside and I shut the door behind us. I didn't want a hotel staff member to catch us. I felt my face drain of colour once I saw the inside of the twin single room. It was definitely Farah and Satine's. I recognised the brand of luggage Farah had, and Satine's phone was sitting on the kitchenette counter. However, that wasn't what I first noticed in the room. The thing I immediately noticed was the room had been torn apart. Clothes had been thrown all over the floor, and Satine's backpack was ripped in two. The phone itself was cracked and broken. "Anyone home?" Sharon called, a small waver in her voice. Vadik stepped forward protectively. Furniture was upturned and the hotel safe was open and empty. Panicked, I ran through the open bedroom door. The bedroom had suffered the same treatment, with one major difference. Vera and Satine were both here, unmoving. Checked Satine, she might have Moti. I ran to Satine and rolled her on her back. "Satine? Satine, are you alright?" Her eyes flooded open and she coughed. There was a gash on her shoulder and it was still bleeding. I quickly pressed down on it. She let go of Farah's phone and closed her eyes again. I turned and saw that Sharon was kneeling next to Farah, so I called out to Vadik instead, my voice breaking. "Call an ambulance, she's bleeding pretty bad." "Farah doesn't need one," Sharon murmured and stood up silently. "What do you mean?" I asked. "She isn't..." "Dead," she rasped, pulling the cover from the other bed and draping it over Farah. "What happened here?" I groaned, still trying to stop Satine's bleeding. "Robbery," Satine coughed, opening her eyes again. "They wanted money. Attacked us to get it." "Mate, you just take it easy," Sharon hummed, coming to squat next to me. "We'll get you some help. It'll be alright." By the time the paramedics had Satine in the back of the ambulance, the man at the front desk was gone. Vadik spoke to the paramedics in Russian for a moment before coming back to Sharon and me. "They said this isn't their first call from here," he sighed. "The hotel staff have started robbing their clients, and a few weeks ago it started getting violent." "So they kill for money?" I asked, enraged. "No, your friend was an accident. Farah was the first to have been killed." "Why didn't they just stay with Dolores and the others?" "We can't think about that now," Sharon murmured, placing a hand on my shoulder. "They told me to go to the hospital. They told me which hospital they're taking Satine to," Vadik continued. "We can go there whenever you're ready." My phone rang before I could answer. I picked it up without looking at the caller, knowing it could only be so many people. "Hello," I answered. "My friend, from the tone of your voice, the hunt for your motorcon isn't going well," Petrus said. My heart sunk a little. Petrus and Miss Farrell were friends. It would be the right thing to do, telling him. I shook my head. True, Petrus deserved to be told, but not over the phone. At least, that's what I told myself. "We found Satine and Farah. Moti isn't there," I said, carefully wording my sentence. While Sharon and I had stayed with Satine, Vadik had searched the room. True, Moti could have been stolen, but in any case, it wasn't in the hotel. "Well, I might be able to cheer you up then," he said, with a jovial tone in his voice. "I think I know where your motorcon is." "What?" I asked, astounded. "Petrus had found Moti? Tell me." "What are you talking about?" said a female voice on the other end of the line. Dagger, I assumed. Certainly wasn't Dolores. "The blinking lights on the jet," Petrus explained. "They were blinking in sync, and I knew that something was strange about that, and I was right, it was Morse code." "Morse code?" I asked, staring at Sharon, who raised an eyebrow. "Saying what?" "Well, it spelled out, teacher." "Moti's still on the jet." "Well, yes, I thought..." The line went dead suddenly and I frowned, looking down at my phone. "What happened?" Sharon asked, stepping closer. "Petrus thinks Moti's still on the plane. And the call just dropped out," I muttered. A sinking feeling in my gut. "Maybe it's just the connection," Sharon offered. "It's been awful." "It would make sense." "Maybe," I conceded. "You two go to the hospital. Stay with Satine. But first, drop me back at the estate." Sharon and Vadik nodded, piling back into the car. The drive was short, but anxiety was choking me, and the closer we got, the worse it was. When the driveway finally came into sight, I first looked for the plane, glad to see it was still there. Sharon and Vadik heeded my advice and turned around to drive back out as soon as I was out of the car. I walked past the house and the garage and headed for the open jet. "Petrus," I called out as I walked closer. Then I heard a voice from inside the jet. "Teacher?" "Moti, where's Petrus?" I quickened my step, but before I could climb the steps, Petrus appeared at the jet doorway. In one hand he held Moti. I smiled widely, very glad to see Moti again. In his other hand he held a knife. It took me a few seconds to realize it was stuck in his abdomen. I caught him as he fell down the stairs, lowering him carefully to the ground. Petrus, hold on! I'm gonna get you some help," I cried. "I couldn't have two friends killed in one day." "Hello, my friend," he said weakly. "I'm afraid I wasn't able to stop Dagger from leaving." Don't you even worry about it. We'll catch you later. Just breathe, I told him. Dolores emerged from the house and started running towards us, a phone already to her ear. See, Dolores is going to get you the best help money can buy. Money cannot buy life, he rasped, pressing Moti into my palm. I held his hand tightly. Nor can it buy good friends or love. It helps though, doesn't it? I joked weakly. You'll find the answer, he continued. I have faith in you, and that's not an easy thing for a man of science to say. Please hold on, Mr. Petrus. Don't give up, Petrus whispered, eyes falling close. He was dead. Stay with Petrus. I was kneeling next to Petrus's lifeless body just outside the jet. Dolores and I were both silent. When the ambulance arrived, they informed us they would take the body that was they wouldn't take a body that was already dead. Are you kidding? I asked, grieving and infuriated. Who are we meant to call? Coroner, maybe, he shrugged. I just know I won't transport a corpse. He's more than a... I'll handle it. Dolores held her hand out, silencing me. Another ambulance-like vehicle pulled up a short time later and took Petrus from my hands. I was advised in Russian, with Moti translating, to wash the blood off quickly to prevent bloodborne disease. I went straight into the house and showered in my room's ensuite, turned the water to hot, and stayed longer than I needed. Feeling somewhat empty, I dressed and strapped Moti back to my wrist. I'm glad to have you back, Moti. I've missed you. I missed you too, teacher. I was in a Faraday cage box and I couldn't reach you. Miss Dagger is in great danger. Why is that, I asked. Because I'm going to kill her. Alright, we better wrap this one up here. At least we know who done it. It was Dagger. Well, Dagger seemed like the nice one out of the two, too. And Petrus is dead. I don't think I care about Miss Farah because we barely knew her. But Petrus... We go way back with Petrus. That's sad. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Thanks for hanging out with me, and I'll see you in the next one.